Hello and welcome to the Care It Out Sleep Show, a podcast for tired parents who are searching for a bit more sleep the caring way. I'm your host, Kerry Secker, infant sleep consultant, founder of my unique sleep approach, Care It Out, and your caring sleep supporter. I really hope you'll join me on my mission to get Smalls a settled night's sleep without the tears, training or techniques. I love talking about sleep and I can't wait to share my sleep subjects with you. My approach to getting you more sleep is simple, straightforward, but above all, it's got to make sense and feel best for you. Ready to get more sleep? Then let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the Care It Out Sleep Show. I hope you're really well and happy December. I can't believe it either, but it is December and the countdown to Christmas is on. Today I am going to be talking to Anjli from the dental mum. She's a qualified dentist and first-time mum to her 17-month-old daughter Isla, and I really can't wait to talk to her. And some of you have sent in lots of questions for her. So hi Anjli, how are you?
Hello, yes, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Good.
How is everything?
Okay, yeah, just busy. Really work's really busy, which is nice, but it is a bit hectic. And I guess it's just that sort of run up to whatever Christmas we're going to get. So
Yeah,
I've been doing some kind of presents and but planning food deliveries and things like that. So yeah, busy, but all good, thank you.
yeah. It's been such a strange and surreal year, hasn't it? And I think this Christmas, I don't think it's going to be Christmas as we know it, but I'm still busy. I'm still trying to get excited about it.
That's it. I think we'll just have to make the most of whatever we can. So, well, that's kind of our plan anyway. So I think we're grateful that hopefully we'll be able to see some family and stuff. And I mean, we don't have a huge Christmas anyway, so fingers crossed it shouldn't be too different. But it's just a shame the kind of run-up events as well. We had a visit planned to Santa tomorrow, in fact, but because our area is tier 3, we can't. I mean, we could, but half the things are closed, and so we just kind of thought maybe we'll give it a miss. It's just a shame that we're missing out on a few bits like that, but never mind. It is what it is, isn't it?
yeah, and definitely making the most of the situation. So I've been so excited to talk to Anjli, and I absolutely love your Instagram, The Dental Mum.
Thank you.
I get asked, so I think it's because teeth is tied in to teething and sleep, brushing teeth is a bedtime routine, and also milk, taking milk from a beaker or a bottle, or feeding to sleep and feeding at wake ups over night time. So I definitely get asked lots of questions, and I thought, you know what, I just want to get someone in that knows that's their zone of genius, that's your area of expertise. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you today. Do you want to tell us a little bit about you, your work, your Instagram page?
Yeah. So I'm a qualified dentist nearly 10 years now, which is scary when I say it out loud. But yeah, I'm a qualified dentist and have my own dental practice in Leicester, where I live. So I had Isla, she's 17 months, so June last year. And I found through, the initial sort of 12 months or so of having her that I relied quite heavily on Instagram for advice. So I was often looking at sort of pages like yours, or when it came to weaning and things like that. And I just thought it was so useful, and I was so grateful to people like yourselves who were offering your knowledge for free, basically, because obviously otherwise, you're looking at, say with sleep, for example, you're looking at paying potentially, if you just had the odd question here and there, you don't need a whole package. So I just thought it was lovely that people were sharing their knowledge. And then just before Isla turned 1, I sort of saw a little bit of a gap in the market for dental advice. And generally speaking, and from working in general practice, I think dental and oral health is something which can get missed, because I don't think it's talked about as much as it should be. And I think you get some parents and some people who are super aware and conscious of it, and then you get, the others that it's not because they don't want to try, or they don't have an interest in oral health, but they just haven't been told or don't have the knowledge and information on how to kind of the best best practice and best behaviors. So then I thought I'll set, I kind of said to my husband and my family, I was like, well, I have knowledge that I could share, and and I like using Instagram. We have a social media page for our practice, and I enjoy creating content and uploading things. So then that's kind of the dental mum. I set it up, I think, just 2 or 3 days before Isla turned 1. And it's been great. I've had really, really good feedback, which has been nice. Lots of actually family and friends who have been like, oh, I didn't know that, and and then obviously building a bit of a community online as well. So I, like yourself, I do sort of Q&As, which proved to be really popular. But as you kind of touched on, the sort of things that you mentioned are the most common questions that we get asked. And it's funny because to me, I'm like, well, that it seems so obvious, the answer to the question, but I forget that that's because I'm in the dental industry. And I'm like, actually, no, people don't know that. So that's kind of where the social media began. So I'm really excited to obviously be doing this as well. And thank you so much for having and hosting me, because it's definitely something that I think the more and more I'm talking about it, I'm realizing that people just don't know, and whatever little I can do to help is just going to help all these children as they grow older to potentially not have issues with their teeth and have good, healthy relationships with oral health. So yeah.
It's amazing. You 10 years, when you said 10 years, like that probably seems like such a long time. You wait till you say 20 years. I qualified 20 years ago. Like it's insane. Like it's crazy. Like a whole decade, like 2 decades, 1 decade for you and 2 decades for me. I can't believe it.
It's scary.
It is really scary, and it goes so quickly. But like you, I don't think your page is so helpful, and I'm always signposting families to your page. And
thank you so much.
Asking you, must be sick of me asking you questions, and I just think it's I completely agree with you. There is a wealth. Instagram is such a lovely place. There's a wealth of information out there, and for me, I really enjoy creating content as well. And I was laughing when you said that it's really obvious for you as a dentist, because I'm the same with sleep. Somebody will ask me something, I'm like, isn't it obvious? But I didn't. A big part of me not going on there to begin with was just like, well, people know this stuff. Why would they want me to add to it? But people don't. And it's sometimes the most obvious things to us that are the most helpful to other people. And I can really see you enjoy creating your content and giving advice out there. And I think that's what drew me to your page, to be honest, because I can see that. And I think it's so important to share what we can. Like, I wouldn't expect anybody to give away their work for free, but helping people and sharing information, I'm really passionate about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just sometimes the odd, like you said, it's just something to you that's so obvious, but the smallest change or the smallest bit of information to somebody can make a huge difference to their routine or things like that. And obviously sleep, for example, speaking from experience, like when you get sleep, you crack sleep. I mean, but do you ever? Because I feel like she'll sleep fine, and and I'll think like I'm done something amazing, and then I don't know, she just won't. But anyway, sleep, I think, can change parents' lives for the better. And I think with oral health, I think it's just, like I said, establishing really good and healthy habits, because we all want the best for our children. As parents, nobody would knowingly do any. You don't want to do anything that's going to bring them to any harm, but I think if you haven't got the knowledge with dentistry, potentially you could be doing harm or creating issues in the future. So yeah, definitely I'm all for sharing that information. So yeah,
I think it's important, and that especially, I think, with the year we've mentioned COVID earlier. Like, I would again, I don't like assumptions. That's often the mother of all muck-ups. But I would imagine that some people are worried about going to visit their dentist.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, thankfully we've not had like the impact of COVID on from a business perspective hasn't been as bad as we thought it would be when lockdown and things were initially announced. But what has happened is the access to dentistry has become very difficult, not through people like us, but through the restrictions that have been placed on us with regards to PPE and and the procedures we can and can't do, and people, our practice would be heaving, the doors would be open and people would be in and out. But even just the fact that we have to leave the doors locked, you have to have an appointment, you have to be triaged by phone. So I think and through lockdown and in this more recent one as well, it's been nice that if I have had parents reach out to me, that I am able to offer. Obviously it's difficult, and I'm sure you're the same, you can't offer specific advice without, especially, you know, I have to assess clinically sometimes, but at least give generic advice until they're able to access that dental care. So so, you know, that, but yeah, it's a scary time in lots of things, and I think, you know, parents have been worried that they can't take their child to the dentist, or the safety of going to the dentist, but I think we'll all get, you know, we're kind of up and running in a different way, but a way that's working. So fingers crossed that will just continue to become more efficient, and we'll get back to some sort of form of normality sooner rather than later, hopefully.
Oh, fingers crossed. I think parents need reassurance, whether you are a new parent, first-time parent, second-time parent, fourth-time parent, sixth-time parent. I think parents always need that little bit of reassurance, but especially now, I think it's even more important.
Absolutely, yeah.
Reassurance. And teeth, like, I hadn't realised, like, I was so excited to speak to you, but I hadn't realised actually just how much teeth are linked to sleep, which is really funny when I say it like that. But there is, I get asked a lot of questions, such as how can we ease teething to help sleep? Because when we're in teething hurts, when they're in discomfort, it's like us. It's going to have an impact on their sleep. I get asked a lot about the dummy and the sleep, dummy and the teeth. Should they, I'm not a fan of the word should, but is there an age they should stop it? Is it really bad for teeth from a dental point of view? Should they be feeding sleep on the bottle? Is it okay to feed them sleep at wake ups? What happens if they feed sleep on the breast or bottle at bedtime? When should you clean their teeth? What happens if they don't like cleaning teeth? So these questions, when I think about it, they do come up quite a lot in practice. So if it's okay with you, if there's anything you want to share, like any of your biggest tips for like infant dental health, feel free to share them. But if not, I'd love to go through a few of these questions.
Yeah, let's if we run through the questions, and then if there's anything that I kind of think I haven't mentioned, then I can definitely come back to it. So yeah.
Super. I'm just going to get my highlighter out because I absolutely love highlighting things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I think one of the most common questions I get is what happens is when happens.
You should really start brushing their teeth as soon as they have them. And something that I've kind of more recently become aware of is some companies do dental whites, like for the gum. So something that some parents can introduce before baby even has any teeth is wiping the gum, because it sort of gets them used to the sensation of something being in the mouth other than breast or bottle, because that's all they'll be used to. But really, in terms of brushing, you want to be brushing the teeth as soon as you can see them starting to push through, if you haven't started anything already. I get asked a lot about toothbrushes. Do I recommend a particular toothbrush? I don't really. There's not a particular brand. When it comes to adults, it's different, but with children, you just want something soft, something small. You don't want to be using a huge toothbrush with a really big head. You don't want an electric toothbrush or battery powered. You don't need anything fancy, because when they've got just one or two teeth, or even 4 or 8, it's not the same as brushing our teeth. And so anything you can easily get into their mouth. I think the most important things really with brushing is to establish it as part of the routine, wherever you feel that's appropriate. So the advice for brushing is twice a day, which is last thing at night and at one other time. So it doesn't have to be in the morning if that doesn't work. If it works better to brush teeth when they wake up from their morning nap, for example, because I know with Isla, that's when we used to get her out of her pajamas. But not at 7 in the morning, but at like 10:30 or whatever. So if that's the better time for brushing, then do it then. But it's just making sure that you can establish it as part of the routine and doing the best you can. So I talk about this quite a bit on my Instagram page, because I'm a dentist, my husband's a dentist, and so our relationship with oral hygiene is healthy and normal and good and whatever. And Isla got her first tooth. We didn't do anything before, to be honest, but as soon as she got her first tooth coming through, we were so excited. I went to Sainsbury's and I bought this Aquafresh toothbrush, and I bought a milk teeth toothpaste, so a fluoride containing toothpaste, and got home and kind of was really excited to start brushing her teeth the went, oh my God, she just wouldn't open her mouth. Like, it was not happening. And I was shocked because, and this has been my experience as a parent versus a dentist, that a lot of the things and the advice that I would give before I had Isla has now changed completely, because the reality of the situation is not what you think it is or what you learn at university about children's oral health, for example, and dummies and thumb sucking, which I can come to, all fit under that same kind of thing. So it's really common for your child, your baby or your toddler, to not be happy with with you brushing their teeth, because it's a foreign concept and something they're not used to. So the best advice I can give, and what we did, was just keep doing it, keep introducing it. So twice a day, where we found time within our routine, we would try and brush our teeth in the same place, and we would do whatever we could. So if it was a case of just she took the brush and she did nothing with it, but put it in her mouth, that was fine. And we kept doing that. And I think it took about 4 to 6 weeks, I think. But all I remember is I was in our bedroom and my husband called me in the bathroom, and he was like, come quickly. And he was brushing her teeth. And I don't know what changed. Something just clicked and suddenly she was fine with it. And I know that's just our experience and everybody's will vary. But I think consistency is key. So, even if they don't allow you to do it. And another thing that people often ask is, they're getting really upset, should I just keep doing it? My best advice, depending on the age of your child and things like that, is no. If they're starting to get upset, don't push it, because what you don't want to do is make it a negative thing. And you don't want them to associate seeing their toothbrush with something that's unpleasant, because then you'll really struggle to come back from that, in my opinion. It's important to start doing it. Timing and routines is, I think you're kind of going to come to that anyway, but the last thing before bed is a tricky one from a personal perspective. So again, me pre-Isla would have said, no, milk, wait 20 minutes, then brush, then bed. But the reality of the situation, and even in my own routine, that doesn't happen. Isla still has a bottle for her milk, which again is not something which really is recommended, but I can't drop it. So the parent in me is like, well, pick and choose my battles. So we brush her teeth as part of her bedtime routine, but it's not after milk, it's before milk. So it's after dinner and before milk. But the gold standard, if it is possible for you to kind of rejig your routine, would be last thing before they go to bed. But when brushing, and the same goes for adults as well as children, you want to wait at least 20 minutes after any food or drink before brushing. And this is a huge one that I got a lot of reaction to on my Instagram page, because a lot of people brush straight after breakfast. I don't know if you were ever in that camp or...
I actually brush before breakfast now. I don't know whether that's right or wrong.
Yes,
but I'll brush my teeth as soon as I'm awake now.
Yes, so that's the correct way in terms of timing. That's before food is, that's fine. That's what we all do. So first thing in the morning. But what happens whenever we eat or drink anything is the pH of our saliva becomes more acidic. So you need to wait, and it takes about 20 minutes or so for that to neutralize before brushing your teeth. So the odd time here and there, if you were to brush your teeth straight away after food, it's not going to be the end of the world, but it's not something which you would want to be a regular occurrence. So with babies and children, if they're having their milk and then you're brushing their teeth before they go to sleep, that's not ideal. And to wait that 20 minutes after milk before bed doesn't work as well in some people's routine. So it's trying to fit it into what works, obviously, but be mindful of what you're aiming and working towards. That's what we're doing. So we're trying to find ways where, firstly we try and get her off the bottle, and then try and move milk, and then move brushing and things like that. So that's the gold standard advice is last thing before bed.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm really, really loving this. I've definitely learned something, and I'm loving your honesty, and it's so refreshing and so lovely, like that expectation. And I can draw parallels from that. When I did my training, I was trained to do 20 years ago now, the whole control crying, you are the boss, babies manipulate you. And in theory, it sounds fine on paper. When I was in the classroom for 2 years learning that, I'm like, this sounds great. And then you come out into practice and I'm just like, No, the theory doesn't always fit into practice, or the expectation isn't always reality.
Yeah,
I love
that's
that.
definitely it. Yeah, and I think, so we touched on habits. You mentioned dummies and thumb sucking. So Isla's a thumb sucker. I actually was as well. But it's something I had no control over. And when she started to suck her thumb, we thought, should we introduce a dummy to try and intercept thumb sucking? Because from the things I know, it's easier to get rid of a dummy than a thumb is attached to her hand, so that's not going to happen until she's ready. But she wouldn't take it, and she just wanted to suck her thumb. And I remember, I have a really good relationship with my health visitor, and I'm very grateful to her for a lot of the help and advice she's given me. And I remember talking to her, and she was like, if she wants to suck her thumb, she's going to suck her thumb. So the dentist in me and my husband kind of just thought, okay, forget it. It's not ideal. It's not what we ever would have planned for, as are half the things that we've done since we had her, 99% of the things that we've done since we had her. So we'll just accept that this is, it soothes her, she's happy, and we'll cross that bridge about stopping, when we come to it, and deal with the consequences when we do, and because there's certain things that you just don't have control over. So I think, and that when you say honesty, I think that's something which I through my page, I didn't want to be pushing people to unrealistic things, and I'd rather just be honest. And at the end of the day, if you have the best intentions and you're trying to, that's all you can do as a parent, I think. If you're kind of not aware, you don't have the knowledge, or you disregard the knowledge, then I think it's different. But if you know what you should be doing and you're working towards that, that's all you can do. You can't do much else. And they're stubborn, aren't they? Children are stubborn.
Parenting isn't about battling. I talk about this a lot, but even though it can feel like it sometimes, so there aren't any winners or losers. It's only a battle if we make it in our head. But you're never, if you go up against your baby, your toddler, your child, you are never going to win. It's just because it is going to become a massive battle. And that's what I really like about that, the whole routine. I never ever thought about it like that it's okay to clean your teeth at different times of the day. I guess as adults, I like it because it makes me feel awake. I feel good when I brush my teeth in the morning, which reinforces, when we feel good, that actually reinforces a healthy habit. Which is great. And I only recently learned, and actually I don't know whether this is any truth in it, and it's nothing to do with sleep, but I'm going to ask anyway, is that they only put mint in the toothpaste to encourage us, that we don't need mint, we don't need a flavour in our toothpaste.
No.
That clean, fresh feeling, that's what keeps us coming back for more and actually keeps us cleaning our teeth.
Yeah, absolutely. But the opposite is sort of true for babies and children. So quite often children don't like the minty taste of toothpaste, and that actually puts them off. So as an adult, yes, and I'm the same. I can't go downstairs or eat or drink anything until I've brushed my teeth. It's just, I don't feel like fresh, and I still feel like whatever. So yes, but children's toothpaste, for example, come in a variety of flavors. So for example, the one Isla's using at the moment is an apple flavor, which to me, even when I smell it, I'm like, oh my god, I wouldn't want to brush my teeth with that. But sometimes that's more pleasant for them. And the milk teeth that she was using had whatever strawberry flavor to it. And so flavoring really is just to entice you and make it more appealing. And it's a very personal thing. I'll get patients who I'll recommend a particular toothpaste and they absolutely will 100% not use it because of the taste, or the other way around. So no, we don't need it. But for children, you might sometimes if your child's using the same toothpaste as you, depending on their age, and if you're supervising it, that's appropriate. But they might refuse because of the taste, and then it's always worth trying something that has a different flavour to it, because you might find that then they have no issues with it.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And as a nanny, I remember the family having like 3 or 4 different toothpastes because everybody has their preference.
Yeah.
And then one very quick question
Sure.
is, I've seen over the years a rise, or lots of families using electric toothbrushes, or those little battery operated ones.
Yeah.
Can we use them for them? And when is it appropriate to use an electric toothbrush, if it is ever appropriate?
You can, but I would probably say for your children, probably 3+ for a battery powered or electric toothbrush. Up till that point, a manual toothbrush is is sufficient. There's nothing really wrong with using an electric one beforehand, and sometimes people will say that because their child sees them using an electric toothbrush, they want to do the same, so they don't understand why theirs doesn't vibrate or whatever, light up or whatever. So there's no harm, but really with brushing, it's just making sure you're being thorough and covering all the tooth surfaces. And sometimes, particularly even with myself, I find I'll have more control with a manual toothbrush versus an electric one. An electric one, potentially she'd have more temptation to play with it, as opposed to just letting me get on with it. And she always has a brush herself, but at the moment she's quite good at letting me do it first. But no, there's nothing wrong with it. But what you definitely don't need to do is invest in a really expensive one for your children. For your younger babies and children, you just go for a battery powered one. But for adults, older children and adults, yes, 100% an electric toothbrush is much more effective. They have the same level of effectiveness, manual and electric toothbrushes, if a manual brush is used in the 100% correct way. But the reality of the situation is nobody will brush properly with a manual toothbrush, myself included. So yes, for adults and older children, an electric toothbrush is great, definitely.
Oh, okay, that definitely makes more sense now. And yes, coming back briefly to you talked about where to clean the teeth in the bedtime routine, and that honestly makes so much sense to me. Like the gold standard would be that they have their milk, wait 20 minutes, brush their teeth, but that isn't always possible, because especially for breastfed babies, because they are more likely to feed all the way to sleep. So that was really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. Two questions there. If they do fall asleep on the breast or bottle, is there anything you can do to help the teeth? Does that make sense? And long term, is that going to have an impact on their oral health?
So this is a really tricky one to give. It's a difficult. No. It's because I know what the answer should be, but again, it's about being practical. So breastfeeding, I would say, the risk of developing decay, because that's what we're worried about, is lower than with bottle feeding, especially with formula. So the issue is with falling asleep whilst feeding. The issue is that milk will be sitting on their teeth, and that milk sitting on the teeth can cause cavities in them. So if you can, where possible, ensure that that's not happening, which, correct me if I'm wrong, and I didn't have a very good experience of breastfeeding, so I don't know, but I feel like the way that breast milk is taken in is probably less likely for that to happen versus a bottle. I think with a bottle, you're more likely to get that collection and pooling of milk on the teeth, which is why bottle feeding to sleep is more of an issue. But it's just trying to clear the mouth of any milk so you've not got milk sitting there. There's a couple of things with that. Falling asleep, breastfeeding and bottle feeding, I guess it's something which, from a sleep perspective, potentially you would be looking to change that habit anyway as they get older. Correct me if I'm wrong. So maybe when it's happening, they're younger, potentially they haven't got teeth, or they've got less teeth, or they've not got other dietary sugars and things that you would also worry about. So maybe it's something which you'd be working towards breaking that habit anyway, not for teeth purposes but for everything else. One thing I would be really mindful not to do, which I've seen it happen with patients, is some parents will give their child a bottle to sleep with in the night, so they have a bottle in their cot. That is something which I would 100% say to get rid of, because if the child has access to that bottle, free access to that bottle, and they're going to kind of sip on it and whatever, firstly, if they're using it as kind of a dummy, or as like a thumb and sucking on it, then that's going to have implications in terms of growth and development of the dentition, the same way a dummy would or a thumb would. But if that milk is constantly in their mouth and that milk's in the cot with them and it's going to be sitting there, then they are 100% going to get cavities in their teeth, and we see it a lot. It's called bottle caries, or bottle decay, and the only way you'll see it, and I'll ask that question straight away: do you give baby bottle in their cot? And they're like, yeah, they go to sleep with milk with them. That's something I would 100% stop, because I think that can have serious implications. But I think falling asleep feeding, but then removing that bottle, obviously the breast, or removing the bottle and trying where possible to ensure there's not milk really pooling and sitting on their teeth. That's really the best that you can do with regards to that.
Yeah, makes sense. And what about, you mentioned the dental wipes earlier, wiping the mouth with a flannel or a wipe if they fell asleep on the breast or the bottle afterwards?
Yeah, you can do, if that's something that works. I know when Isla's asleep, I don't even want to be within like a 10-mile radius of her. So yeah, I probably wouldn't touch her. But
Yeah.
you know, if that's something which works, and again, it makes it a bit more, you know, from a parent's perspective, you know, you can ensure that milk's kind of gone, then yeah, that's absolutely fine. But you know, it's just one of these things, isn't it? I think it's easier said than done if they're falling asleep feeding, but I would be more concerned if they were falling asleep bottle feeding. I personally, I would say, than breastfeeding.
Yeah, makes sense. And it's quite rare that I would have a baby in practice fall asleep on the bottle. It does happen, but it is definitely less likely.
Yes.
And just to echo that, from a sleep perspective, my whole approach is feeding to sleep, whether that's breast or bottle, isn't an issue unless it's an issue for you. And some babies, it's not a bad habit. It doesn't impact them switching their sleep cycles at night time. But again, with the bottle, I would try and, it's not about stopping them from feeding all the way to sleep on it. It would be giving a bit of a break, wiping their mouth afterwards, whether that was breast or bottle if you want to. But 100%, I can't echo this enough. I would never, ever recommend, it goes against SID guidelines anyway, to have the bottle in, like to have them falling asleep on the bottle in their cot, if that makes sense. But I personally would never, ever recommend doing that for that reason. Water is a little bit different when they get a little bit older, but definitely not a milk.
And water's fine. You know, water's not going to cause any issues. Again, I would avoid putting water in a bottle, because obviously the sucking motion and, you know, comforting on the bottle. But you know, water in a straw cup or something like that's fine. You know, water's not going to do any harm at all. So
yeah, makes sense. That's really interesting, because I'm wondering I don't know whether I would have thought of that. Like, would I put water in a bottle? I don't think I have done it, but I don't know whether I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, we have it. Isla was virtually formula fed from about 4 months. So when it was really hot, pre 6 months, I did put cool boiled water in a bottle for her in the night, actually, if she would wake up and I knew she wasn't hungry, but I think she was just thirsty because it was really warm. But after 6 months, I would always put it in a cup for her. But I guess it's just one of these things, isn't it? It's just whatever makes sense to you at the time. So and I know a bottle can be a source of comfort as well for children. So you know, but it's just trying to avoid that. Something that comes down to a habit. If they're comforting on a bottle, it's the same as a dummy or a thumb. So and that, like I said, that's not really decay related, unless, you know, depending on what's in the bottle, that's more the position of the teeth and the development of the jaw. That's kind of where that's more of an issue.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. This is absolutely fascinating. And it's the same. The other question I have, it kind of leads on to that. What happens if they wake up? Because babies, toddlers do have feeds at night time. And again, from my sleep perspective, feeding at night time is never a bad habit. It doesn't need to stop unless you want it to. But from a dentist perspective, should we be brushing their teeth at the middle of the night?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think that's, again, with that 20-minute thing and whatever, I don't really think it would be practical to do that. You know, I just think it's the same sort of thing. Just try and ensure they're not falling asleep with milk in their mouth. But you know, Isla was having a feed in the middle of the night only until quite recently, I would say. We'd give her milk, and then I'd always change her nappy. It's funny, because is that something that because a lot of people say not to change their nappy in the night because it wakes them up, but I've always done it, and she does wake her up, but then she goes back to sleep. Don't know, but anyway, because
I'll answer that question in a sec, definitely.
Yeah, because she'd have her milk, and then I'd change her nappy, and she would be properly awake, like fully awake, and kind of smiling and babbling and whatever. That was my way of ensuring that no, there's no milk in there now. You know, it's been a good 5 minutes since she finished her milk before I put her down. But again, I know that's just my own experience. I know everyone's is different. So it just comes back to the same thing as falling asleep feeding. It's the same sort of principle.
Yeah, makes sense. And if you are concerned about it, wipe their mouth.
Yes. Yeah,
makes sense. And answering your question, nappy at night time, again, definitely get asked this a lot. And I think most things on my pressure will always come down. It depends on the baby. But my suggestion would be to try and avoid changing a nappy at night time from a sleep perspective. Lots of different reasons. The main one is that nappies are very good now at wicking away the wee. So it's very unlikely that they're going to get sore or it's going to need changing. I'd probably only change if it was a poo and it had woken them, or it was absolutely sopping, they'd leaked through, or you're your little one's expert, you can tell that it's bothering them. And the other thing is, because there's no greater way of waking your baby up than whipping off the nappy and exposing themselves. Like, it's just, I don't know, it feels really fresh, doesn't it? And they're awake. And some babies can find it very difficult to get back to sleep. And my suggestion, interesting, isn't it? Because my suggestion would be to change the nappy before the feed. I can understand that. But I guess it's just balancing there's so different layers to it. It's about balancing every part of what's working, what isn't, what's best for each part of the body, I guess.
Yeah, and I also think it's on the baby. I mean, I think, like you said it yourself, you know, if your baby's bothered, or if your baby can, I guess, fully wake up. Like Isla was, she can be awake, but then she could get herself back to sleep. But if I was worried that she wasn't, then I wouldn't, then you wouldn't do it. So I think it's just about, I guess it's each baby's different, and it's about making what you can, just make it work, really, and to be practical and just take the pressure off. I think as parents, we put so much pressure on ourselves about everything, absolutely everything, don't we? Like feeding, sleeping. You said poo. Has she done a poo? Has she not? What was it like? What was the consistency? What was the colour? Is she happy? Was she crying? Has she got a runny nose? Like, is she learning enough? Is she this? And I think we just put so much pressure on ourselves that I think it's about taking pressure off. And there are certain things that will be beyond our level of control, and there are, and so it's just no point worrying about it. Like the thing, if they wake up in the night for a feed, well, that's your baby, and that's what I agree with that's what they need. So don't then take pressure like, oh, I'm worried about the teeth or the sleep or this, I know about doing it. Do what works. But I think just try and keep those gold standards in the back of your mind and work towards them where you can.
There's so much pressure to be this perfect parent and get it precise every day, and we can't. Life logistics, every baby's different, every family's different. It's so tricky. But one tip I do have for sleep is, if you do need to change the nappy at night time, because there will be times when you will need to do that, I would try to keep interaction to an absolute minimum. I don't think anybody's going to be all singing, all dancing parent at that time of the morning, and try to do it as dark as possible. Try not to put all the lights on. I mean, if you've done a punami, or your baby's done a punami, you'll need to put the light on, obviously.
Of course,
But again, you can only do your best in that moment. I think that's really a really lovely message, actually.
Yeah.
So just another 3 really super quick questions then.
Mm-hmm.
When should they stop the bottles? Again, I know that the NHS guidelines are by a year.
Yes.
I know from personal and from in practice that isn't always the case. So it'd be great to get some insight into that.
Yeah, so 12 months is what we would say. But it's kind of, I think, a lot of weaning specialists say when you're weaning them off formula, for example, well, if they're bottle fed because they're formula fed, instead of weaning them off onto cow's milk in a bottle and then off the bottle, you just do it together. So you just wean them off bottle and formula into cow's milk in a cup. And so you're only weaning once. I only really read that after I'd already put her on cow's milk in a bottle for her. But to be completely honest, I don't know whether I would still do it any differently, only because I personally like the fact that Isla drinks a lot of milk. She really likes cow's milk, and she drinks it really well from a bottle, and she doesn't drink as much from a cup. And I'm not confident in myself that she gets enough dairy in her diet. She gets dairy in her diet, but I like measuring things, and I like knowing that she's had X number of ounces of cow's milk a day. So yes, the advice is 12 months, but again, and I know I've got friends that obviously similar children with similar age, and they're still bottle fed as well. I think the main issues are, like we've said, about falling asleep with milk in the mouth. So that's kind of something which can be related to bottles that I would try and avoid where possible, or, with milk sitting on the teeth. And also, I think it's, how long they're taking to have a bottle. But again, just from my own personal experience, she finishes a sort of 7-8 ounces of milk in about 3 or 4 minutes, and then that's it. Then the bottle's out her mouth, and then we put it away, and she doesn't see it again until bedtime, when she has her next. Well, she only has 2 a day at the moment, but so 3-4 minutes of a bottle really is not going to have, considering she sucks her thumb, 3-4 minutes of sucking on a bottle is not going to have a massive negative implication on her dental development. So I wouldn't get so caught up. If your child's doing the same thing, they're literally having 2-3 quick bottles a day and that's it, I wouldn't worry too much, to be honest. I think again, it's a balancing act between nutrition, routine, comfort, what works. I think like we said, the main issues around bottles, I would say, are milk sitting on the teeth, using the bottle as for comfort. These are things which I would then be mindful to try and move away from them. But I think from 12 months, it's useful to, again, bear in mind that you're going to move away from bottles sooner rather than later. But sometimes I don't know, and I'm not at that stage yet, but I feel like potentially it's sort of like potty training. Like, is it not kind of when your child is ready as well? I feel, I don't know, but we were talking this morning before we started recording about her being in the toddler room. So in the toddler room, they all have milk from an open cup. So I feel like she's only been there about just over a week, but I feel like within a few weeks or months or whatever, she herself probably will come to expect milk in a cup as opposed to in a bottle. So just wait for it to be led by her a little bit as well by it. But yeah, that again, I don't know. That's just personal preference. That's not professional advice at all. But yeah, so I would say, I wouldn't get too caught up on it, but I would try and move away from it up from 12 months onwards if possible.
Yeah, makes total sense. I've worked with a lot of families, both as a nanny and in practice, where older ones are having a bottle, but it's really good to know that they weren't falling asleep on it. They would have their milk from their bottle at night time. It was really quick, and then they would either brush their teeth afterwards or wipe down. So I think that's really helpful to know.
Yeah.
And would that be the same advice at night time? Because some 18-month-olds do still need a feed at night. I hate that word, I've said it. Still need a feed at night time. I don't mean it in, oh my goodness, they're still feeding, but they still do need a feed. That's where they're at. Like you, I don't believe that right at 12 months exactly, or at any set age or stage, they've got to drop a nap, drop the bottle. They're all really different. Is that going to be a problem at night time? Would it still be the same advice?
I think it's just a very similar thing. I think if it's a quick bottle, there's no milk in there, then just do what works. If you're working towards dropping the night feed anyway, then I think that's to move away from that in a bottle would be beneficial as part of it. But I wouldn't, I guess I wouldn't say like, don't give them the night feed because it's in a bottle because of their teeth, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah, so I think that would kind of be more practical advice. But I guess, and I'm the same, like try and move away from it where you can. I guess that's the best advice. Like be aware that it's not ideal. And so for example, up until quite recently, Isla was on 3 bottles a day. So she'd have one just before her or just after her lunchtime nap. And I kind of thought, well, look, I know she has enough in the morning and enough at night, so let's drop that one, but offer her milk, but give it to her in a cup, because I know she'll drink more from a bottle, but doesn't mean she needs it, but that's just her. So I think it's having that kind of mentality as well, that where you think you could make a change, then do it, but where you think it's really going to disrupt other things, then maybe just take it a bit, take the pressure off, but be mindful that you try and work away from that.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And then, I promise, last 2 very quick questions. There's so much to ask you. I'm really enjoying it. Dummy and teeth?
Yeah, so dummy and thumbs and fingers, and when they get older, pens, any kind of digit or object sucking habit does have an impact on their development of their mouth in terms of the position of the teeth and the development of the jaws, because it's a really, really powerful force. The sucking motion is really powerful. What it causes is it can cause the upper jaw to narrow and become quite V-shaped. It can cause the lower jaw to underdevelop because it's being sort of pushed back and held back, and it can cause the teeth to stick out, because if you imagine there's a thumb or a bottle or whatever going in there, or a dummy, sorry, and if you know, like, it's so funny, but as a dentist I could literally see a child and tell you whether they suck their thumb or have a dummy, because you can see it from a distance even.
Really?
100%. I see, you know, Isla has that classic appearance of it. I could see someone's child on Instagram, and not obviously always, but you know, if they're quite a heavy dummy user or thumb sucker, you would 100% be able to see it. The good news is things can rectify themselves if the habit is stopped early enough, and I would say sort of the age of 3, I think, you know, that you know, if you could stop any habit before 3, then growth will kind of take over and correct a lot of the issues that might have developed in those first sort of 3 years or whatever of doing it. It's not a guarantee, and they may still require some form of orthodontic treatment when they're older, but it may be less invasive, and you know, there may be less to it. There might just be some minor alignment issues as opposed to big sort of jaw issues, for example. But prolonged habits after that age, they can really have an impact on the jaws and growth. So I would definitely work towards stopping sooner rather than later. That's why we toyed with the idea of dummy, and we tried to introduce it because we thought, you know, say for example, now, like, Isla's 17 months, and you know, she sucks her thumb, but at random time. I don't think she uses it for comfort anymore. That's what she used to do. She used to fall asleep, suck her thumb and fall asleep. I'm sure that's something that, as you know, that's something you probably, I think it's good, isn't it, whether they do that, but she doesn't do that anymore. When I see her wake up and she cries, she doesn't use her thumb to go back to sleep. Somehow she just goes back to sleep, but she'll suck her thumb at other times, but she's doing it a lot less. So I think if she had a dummy, this would have been a great time for me to get rid of the dummy, because I know she doesn't need it. So I think as a parent, I think if you see those kinds of signs and you think, I don't know whether they actually need it for the things that was really helping me when they were newborn, for example, to comfort, they're not using it for that, then dummies, if you can get rid of them, 100% get rid of them. I don't know, I don't have advice on this, but I know from other people say go cold turkey and whatever, so whatever you think works. A thumb is harder, obviously, so thumb sometimes does have to wait until they're older, and I think until they understand why they shouldn't be sucking their thumb, or they understand that they shouldn't be doing it, and then obviously there's lots of things that you can buy, you know, to help break the habit, and you can look on the internet, and there's lots and lots of advice on, and I think it's just, you know, we're going to have to cross this bridge soon, but yeah, definitely, you know, I wouldn't get so caught up in it in the early stages, and I think if it helps it, you know, that again, from a personal perspective, I'm glad she sucked her thumb. It's really helped us up till this point, because she's, touchwood, always been an okay sleeper and she settles herself, but definitely within the next sort of 12 months or so, we're going to look at trying to stop it where we can, because then that's where it can potentially cause issues.
Yeah. Oh, that was really, really helpful. Can I just say I'm slowly removing, I'm a pen sucker.
Okay.
As you said that, I very slowly removed the pen.
I know. Yeah. You know, you see, honestly, it's not uncommon. And we say, because thumb sucking, people know dummy sucking, but a lot of children suck their fingers as well, like 2 fingers. And it's all the same. It's all one and the same. If there's something in there that you know, I guess with adults, like have, you know, that it's going to be less of an issue orthodontically. It's not going to really move. I mean, it would if you were doing it all day, but you know, so you can chip your teeth, for example. So there's other issues with it. But with our babies and children growing so quickly and developing so quickly, any kind of external interference can have quite a significant impact. But the good thing is, as I said, in these early years, it can correct itself. So if I look at a photo of Isla from 6 months ago, say around the time she turned 1, to now, her teeth look better and her jaws look better and her teeth look less pushed out, because I know she's sucking her thumb less. These things do correct themselves if you can remove that habit. And I think dummies is an easier one really to get rid of, I guess, because once it's gone, it's gone. My thumb is a bit of a difficult one.
Yeah, and there's loads of ways. Cold turkey is again, there's no right or wrong way to ditch a dummy. Again, from a sleep perspective, I wouldn't recommend. I've never suggest introducing a dummy. But at the same time, like, I don't think a dummy, unless there was reflux, then I might suggest it. But before doing that, reflux is a medical matter, so I would be signposting them to a more appropriate professional than myself. But sometimes I would recommend a dummy for that, because it can help ease reflux. But I would never recommend a dummy to improve sleep. I've never done it, and I don't think I ever will. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily, if the dummy is working for their sleep, it's working for them, I wouldn't recommend ditching it. But that's really useful to know that by 3, it's ideally we want it gone by 3. Is that what we're saying?
Definitely. Yeah. That's the cutoff. Yeah.
So, for example, if a baby, because I get asked this all the time, use dummy just for sleep, so just for naps and sleep overnight time, it was minimal usage, it's okay to use it quite late, up until 3, you'd say?
I mean, the thing is,
I know they're all different.
Yeah, I think the issue is how long it's in their mouth for, because although we say it's minimal usage if it's just at night, some babies sleep 12 hours, don't they? So if they're kind of going backwards and forwards to the dummy through the night to fall asleep, and then they're finding it and they're putting it back in, then it's can have quite a significant force. It's almost the same as them using it during the day. So I wouldn't say that just using it at night is any better. I'd say use in general, wherever they're using it, whether they're using it, if they're literally using it to fall asleep and then the parent's taking it away and they don't have it again until the next night, then okay, that's not, I think it's the amount of time that it's in there for. So because that's when they're actually sucking on it, that's when it's going to have the impact. So a few 10 minutes in the day is going to be nothing compared to if you totaled it up 4 hours, for example. So I would I guess if it's easier for it to be clear cut, then I would say no, it's better to not have it at all, as opposed to have it at times. I think because it can have such an impact, I suppose. And again, I would be the same if I thought, she only does it for 10 minutes, so it's fine. I think it would be better to not justify it in that way, I guess, and just maybe think, just get rid of it. Because then you're not at risk of, don't get me wrong, they could have any other issue with the dental development. Their teeth can come through in any other way. So it's not to say that this is, if they didn't suck their thumb or have a dummy, their teeth would be perfect, because we know that's not the case. But that's something that we could have a little bit of control over. And if it's prolonged use, then the effect on the jaws can be significant, and it can actually be quite difficult to correct, versus a child that just has overcrowding. That can be a little bit more straightforward to correct. So
it's such a tricky one, isn't it, that one?
Yeah, it's hard, and I guess it, like you said, it's what works. And I think Isla sucking her thumb has worked and has helped us. And if I ever had a second and they didn't suck their thumb and they didn't sleep as well, I would probably be like, oh my god, suck your thumb. Like, please, why are you not? Your sister did it, and that would be ideal. I think it's what, and I never thought I would say that. If you'd met me 2 years ago and we were doing this 2 years ago before I was a parent, my advice would be completely different. Because I know
don't introduce a dummy.
I'd be saying that. And then if I got someone that comes for a checkup and I can tell they suck their thumb, I'd be really strict with the parents. You really need to stop that. And probably looking at an 18-month-old saying that. And now I'm thinking, god, if someone told me that, I'd be like, are you joking? How would you even suggest I start to get her to stop sucking her thumb at this age? So I think it's what's practical. But yes, if you've not introduced a dummy, don't introduce one. If they don't suck their thumb, then fine. But if you have already and they already use it, or they already suck their thumb, or whatever, then just definitely try and work towards the dummy getting rid of it, because it's obviously, in theory, it's easier. A thumb, just be mindful that as you can, just try and stop them or encourage them not to do it where when that becomes appropriate.
Yeah, makes sense. And what are your thoughts on the orthodontic dummies? Do you know the ones I mean?
Yes. Yeah. I can't say I know too much. I still think my kind of professional opinion would be to stay away. I wouldn't, again, I guess, justify it because it's an orthodontic one. I think it would be better. I think the resulting effects would be less. But I still wouldn't make that mean that it's okay to use one, if that makes sense. I don't know if I phrased that very well.
No, it does make sense. Yeah, and I think sometimes you would, if something is, and it doesn't necessarily mean whether it's with dummies, it could be anything, there's less risk, we're more inclined to do it more. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
A great example, if I'm having a healthy biscuit, I'm more likely to have two.
Yeah.
And so I might as well just have the one that wasn't so, which was even, the full fat version, for example.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. So I think where I've said, obviously, through this, and generally my advice is take the pressure off and only control what you can. I think introducing a dummy is something that you can control, and I think if there would be an alternative, the reason you want to use the dummy, if you could do something else and mean you don't need to use the dummy, then do that, as opposed to then say, oh, but if I got an orthodontic one, then that's okay. I would probably think it's better to not. But if there are situations like you mentioned, and I'm sure there are situations where it is the best thing for the child, then fine, yes, maybe go for an orthodontic one then. Although I don't, have you ever come across that in America? Do they tend to recommend them? Is that true? For very early, like newborns, are they more pro pacifiers and dummies? Would you say?
You know what? I'm going to be honest, because I'd always rather be honest and say I'm not entirely sure than answer it and completely judge it. So I'm going to go with I'm not entirely sure. I definitely feel some. I think it just depends on the family. I'm more pro dummies, and I think if you had a dummy as a child, you're more likely to introduce that. So it's just one of those things that's something that baby has. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it's just because I've come across like family members and things, and they kind of, as soon as baby was born, they gave them a dummy straight away. Whereas I didn't have. I mean, I stuck my thumb, but my sisters didn't, but they didn't have them either. So I think it wasn't something which I ever planned to use. As I said, I think family is a huge thing, because if I had one, I probably would have. And actually, I really didn't want her to have one because of the orthodontic thing, and also just I guess it's personal preference, isn't it? I just didn't like the idea of one, and also that I just knew I'd keep thinking it was dirty, which is ironic because her hand is filthy and it's in her mouth a lot,
and they lick everything.
So I don't know, like everything I thought is kind of out the window, but yeah, no, I would just say it's from an orthodontic perspective, I definitely wouldn't recommend one, whether it's an orthodontic one, whether it's a normal one or whatever. I would, and again, thumb sucking is something which is not ideal. It works in exactly the same way, and it's a difficult habit to break. But I'm aware from my personal experience that that's a difficult one to control. You may not be able to do anything about that.
Yeah, and coming back to full circle, like starting at the beginning when we were talking about raising our hypothetical children, it's easy to be a perfect, amazing parent.
Of course.
I think parents are perfect, by the way, and amazing. When you don't have a baby, hypothetically, I wouldn't introduce a dummy for my baby just for the sake of it. I would only introduce it if there was reflux there. But I don't know what I would do until you're actually in that situation. You have no idea what you're going to do.
Absolutely.
And there's probably loads of different reasons for that. Seeing 20 years of being a nanny and working on getting rid of the dummy, it's not always an easy, smooth transition.
No, I can imagine.
They get very attached. My last two girls that I looked after used to call them their best friends.
No, I can only imagine, to be honest. And but I just think if you did introduce it, you'd done that because you needed to, I guess so. But definitely working towards getting rid of them, and I'd say 3 is kind of the cutoff point, in my opinion.
And from a sleep perspective, I never would introduce a dummy to space feeds, to extend feeds longer, if that makes sense. I know that's for some families and some practitioners, that's quite common practice. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just not something I would do. Definitely. Cool. Oh, that was really useful. I've had a really good time. I've definitely learned loads, and I'll definitely be taking it into my practice, which is great. I think we can all learn from each other. Is there anything else you would like to share?
I think the only kind of one little thing I'll touch on is dietary sugars. So obviously not milk and things like that. So just as a general piece of advice, that, you know, we all want to be limiting our children's and our own, but I'll just stick with children's exposure to refined sugar. So snacks, because I know that's something which is quite a big thing. I think where possible, stick with sugar-free, savoury snacks. And I just, like, my one little thing is just check the label on what you're giving your child. You know, I know when babies with Isla, when Isla pre 12 months, I was like, so no, she won't eat this, she won't eat that, just fresh fruit and veg and whatever. But as she's getting older, I'm like, oh, look, they look nice in Asda and Sainsbury's, and let me get her those little flapjacks or crisps or whatever. You know, I'm becoming a little, or she can have what I'm having, or, you know, that kind of thing. So we become a little bit more, like, they're a bit older, aren't they? But always check the label, check for sugar, and please don't be taken in by no added sugar, and particularly dilutes, and things like fruit juice, like processed fruit juice. They actually do contain a lot of sugar. So that's just a general dental thing. And I know the NHS are running like quite a lot of campaigns on sugar because it's linked to so many other things, as opposed to, you know, not just teeth, but obesity, etc. But please just be mindful of that, because that's something we see a lot of issues with, and it's a shame because we get young children coming with lots and lots of cavities, and it's actually not their fault. And it sounds like funny, you know, to say, but it really is that the onus is on the parents for that, because it's what you're giving your child. So sugar is fine, you know, everything in moderation, but stick sugar with meals, not as snacks. And in terms of drinks, milk obviously is okay. We've talked a lot about milk, but water's fine. But my professional opinion and personal opinion, again, if you've never introduced it, don't introduce dilutes, don't introduce fizzy drinks. They're not missing out on anything if they're not having those things. Treat them in other ways, like give them some cake or whatever, but with a meal, as opposed to giving them a can of like Coke or whatever. So that's just one kind of last like dietary advice sort of thing, because we do see a lot of issues with young children and they can have some really, really bad decay, which can lead to infections. And Leicester is not a great area for, you know, children. Have the number of children that have to go into hospital and have extractions under general anaesthetic. You'd be shocked if you saw the numbers. And that's all sugar. Yeah, it's really sad. It's really, really sad to see when you see it in your practice, because you think, you know, you're looking at a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, and you're thinking, you absolutely had no control over this. This was not your fault at all, and you're the one that's suffering now. Where mum or dad, or quite often it's grandparents, for example, they did not need to keep giving you sweets and chocolates all the time, because that was never going to end well. So yeah, that's just my dental bit on the end.
I think it's such a tricky one, because when I was younger, snacks definitely weren't a thing. And I've got a cracking memory. I can never remember my mum ever, like, snack time just wasn't a thing when we were children. I don't think I ever bothered my mum for a snack. I'm definitely not perfect. If you could see me now, I'm sat here with no bra on, in my pajamas. I haven't cleaned my teeth this morning because I got the time wrong. Like, it's very unusual for me, so I'm definitely not perfect. But the whole snack thing, like, I don't even really snack now, to be honest. But it's become snacking has become a real thing. Maybe we can do a whole other.
Yeah, I don't know I never used to give Isla snacks, but at nursery she has breakfast, she has lunch, and then she has tea at 3:30, and then I give her a quick dinner when I get her home at 5:30 before bed, because I think to go from 3:30 to the morning, I just think that's, I don't know. So then when I've got her at home with me on non-nursery days, I kind of give her a snack at 3:30, which is when she would have tea. But I don't know if that's the right thing to do, because then she has a substantial dinner. But I just kind of do it and she eats it, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
It's a tricky one, and it'd be interesting to speak to a nutritionist about that as well, because we are meant to eat little and often. It's just snacks has become a massive thing, and I don't even know where that starts
from.
And the whole labels. And when you say dilutes, do you mean like squashes, like fruit juice?
Yes, there's very few. I think like the lemon barley water is one off the top of my head, which is truly sugar free, but there are very few squash dilute drinks which have no sugar, because they're marketed as no added sugar. As a parent and a consumer, you would look at it and think, oh, that's okay, but it's still, if you looked at the label, it would still have some sugars in it, and in drinks is a huge issue. In adults, it's actually more things like tea and coffee, sugar in tea and coffee, or alcohol, or adults who will have, you know, how we'll fill a bottle of water, they'll fill a bottle with squash, and they'll say, oh, it's really, really dilute, like I just put a tiny drop of whatever it is in there. But doesn't matter. And with sugar, it's not the quantity, it's the frequency of sugar. So I always use the analogy of Haribo, but if you have two children, and you give them both a bag of Haribo, and one eats it all in one go and the other one saves it and let it last the whole day, the one that saved it in theory would have more cavities than the one that ate it in one go.
Interesting. I always eat everything in one go.
Yeah, well, I mean, same. But you know, so drinks can be a real can be an issue, because if you've given, you know, like we leave a cup of water out for Isla and she sips on it through her when she's playing or whatever, but imagine there was squash in there and she was sipping on that all day, then that's a constant there's constant sugar attack on her teeth. So I would you know, with drinks, honestly, I would check if you find one that's got no sugar, and there are a couple, so not to say that there's none out there, because I know there are a couple that don't have any sugars in them, but the majority do. So you know, I would use it if you are going, if they really, really want squash, then I would try and give it with a meal, because in the meal there'll be sugars anyway. So you're limiting the sugar attack on the teeth. I just wouldn't give it as a drink throughout the day. And I definitely wouldn't avoid sugary snacks, because they'll be getting sugar in their meals anyway. You know, the odd treat here and there is fine. If you go out for dinner or whatever, that's fine. But I just wouldn't introduce it as a regular thing or something they come to expect.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I reckon we could probably do a whole other podcast episode just on this, perhaps next year, because the labels in food, I think that's a really good tip, to check the label, because those clever people at marketing, like sugar-free or less sugar, and actually kids snacks aren't always healthy.
No,
even when they're marketed as healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I do check the labels. I mean, I still give her, I'm not, you know, saying, I know, actually I do know some dentists that don't give their children any sugar because they're so worried and they know the impact it can have. We're not in that camp. She definitely has sugar, but I am mindful of what she has, and I do check the labels. And if there's 2 flapjacks, for example, I will give her or yogurts, I'll give her the one that has less sugar in it. And I do try and ensure that it's with a meal where possible, or if she does have it as at snack time, or she had it at tea, let's say at nursery they gave some cake or whatever they had at tea time, then I would make sure that at dinner she didn't have that you know, any sugar. So yeah, I think those are things that we do have control over, and it is really sad. Like I said, I think, you know, it's a shame when you see a child with lots of cavities, because it really is through no fault of their own. And a child will ask for it. I get this a lot. They're like, yeah, but you know, she really wants the chocolate. And I'm like, well, of course we all really want the chocolate. We all really want everything, you know. Like, unfortunately, I know it's the easier option is to say yes and give it to them, but no favors by doing that. So and grandparents is another one that we hear it a lot. Grandparents will kind of not listen to you and they just want to spoil the grandchild, which is what grandparents are there for. But again, it's just explaining that you're doing no justice to them at all, and you will leave them in a situation where they're in pain, or they end up having a lot of dental work done, or you know, that you're leaving them with big issues going forward. And I think it's really, really important to stress that to them, that, you know, that's something that we can control, and we shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And there's so many different layers to it, whether it comes from marketing, not nutrition education, the juice thing. There's so many different things there. I definitely think that could be a whole other podcast. Whole other podcast on that. I was going to say something about the sugar and the snacks, but it's gone. And when you're talking about that, you are talking about constantly grazing on sugar. It's not about banning it completely.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think treats are important. You know, like we would give her a treat, and it's Christmas. So, you know, maybe your child has an advent calendar, that there's a chocolate advent calendar or whatever they're having, or over Christmas they're going to, you know, have exposure to a bit more sugar. And I think that's fine. I think, you know, everything in moderation. I think
it's just constantly grazing on the sugar.
Drinks. I think would be a huge one. And yes, if you know that they're having a sugary cereal and then mid-morning they are a snacker, for example, and they'd pick up like flapjack, so those, you know, OT bites or whatever, something like that, and then after lunch they might have a yogurt, and then in the afternoon they might have you know, some things like ketchup have a lot of sugar in, so something that you think would be savory, something like that. And then with dinner they might have, you know, that's too much sugar in the diet. I would try and limit it, and then that is a constant, you know, there would be a sort of constant sugar attack on the teeth. But yeah, treats and every so often and things like that is fine. Everything in moderation, I think, is not an issue. But yeah, you know, if they're going to grandparents and all day they're saying, yeah, here's some chocolate, or here's a sweet, or here's this, or have some juice or whatever, that will definitely become an issue. Yeah
it makes total sense. I just wanted to double check. I wouldn't want anybody, a parent, feeling guilty that their little one has a little bit of chocolate and a little bit of sugar, and it's going to have an impact like that.
No, of course not. And like I said, we definitely there are some dentists that don't, and I know that from first-hand experience, but we are not in that. You know, Isla will have like a one of those little yogurts. She loves them. So she'll have a Petit Falou yogurt, or she'll have
I love those.
Yeah, and she does, you know, she literally will and she would have probably 10, but again, we limit her to like 1. And you know, like my mum made some cake yesterday and she was looking after her and she gave her some ginger cake. Fine, that's fine, you know, that's okay. But just not to make it a habit. I would try and avoid that.
Moderation. I like it. Anjli, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we've covered lots. So hopefully
we've covered loads.
Yeah,
it's been super useful.
Good. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. So I know it's not easy organising a time, getting on here, turning up at the wrong time. That's why I'm in my pajamas. I was panicking.
Oh, bless you. I think that was me as well, to be honest. I think I've had a bit of a morning.
Very likely to be me as well. But if you can't, what's the perks of being self-employed is that you probably couldn't turn up to work in your pajamas.
No, I wish I could, but no.
It's acceptable sometimes. But I've definitely learned loads, and as I said, I'll be taking it into my practice. I'm going to be talking about this next week when this episode will be available next Tuesday. And if you do want to come on next week and answer some questions on my platform, we'll talk about this afterwards, but if you want to come and answer some questions,
I'd love to. That'd be great.
And the other thing I just wanted to ask you, where can people find you if they want to go and find out more about you?
So I'm just on Instagram because it was just quite a little thing that I set up. So I'm at The Dental Mum. I've got lots of posts on my page with advice, lots of things that we've talked about. And then I do try and I say a weekly Q&A, but sometimes I put the Q&A box up and then I don't get around to answering it for a week. So but I'm always available. You know, I'm more than happy for people I get a lot of DMs and stuff, and I'm more than happy to reply where I can. I can't give specific advice, but you know, generic kind of advice and tips and things like that. I'm more than happy for people to message me as well. So have a little look at my page.
Amazing. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. If people want to find you, I'll put all your links in the show notes as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Anjli, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us. And
you're very welcome.
Enjoy the rest of your December.
Yes, thanks a lot. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to me, your host, Kerry Secker, on the Carrot Out Sleep Show. I really hope you found the podcast reassuring, informative, and a little bit fun. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe to the show below, and I'd be so grateful if you could leave me some fabulous feedback. I always love hearing from you, and one lucky listener will win lifetime access to my Bedtime Basics e-course every single month. My next podcast episode will be out in 2 weeks' time, but if you can't wait for more of my sleep shizzle, you can find me over on Instagram at Carrot Out Sleep Consultant. I update my sleep squares and speak sleep there on the daily. Big love and sleep solidarity to you all.